So today I would like to talk about the Enlightenment, but to do so, I want to talk about the piece of music that you've just listened to. So this piece of music comes what may be one of the most famous musical performances, the aria from the Magic Flute, an opera composed by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Now, it was performed in September 1791 at Vienna's Opera House. Mozart conducted on a libretto composed by Emanuel Schikaneder. And at the time, Austria was ruled by the absolutist but enlightened King Joseph II. The opera was a huge success and performed through the 1790s, though Mozart died shortly after the Magic Flute was performed and could never see or enjoy its success. To this day, it is celebrated as one of Mozart's greatest works. But what made it popular then? It is important to know that opera was not available to all. It was a hugely popular as a form of art and entertainment for kings and aristocrats, performed for them in courts, and they depended on royal patronage, as was the case from Mozart. The Magic Flute tells the story of a young man, Taormino, who must face obstacles and vanquish the Queen of the Night to rescue his beloved. In one scene, the audience could see and hear Taormino, one of the main protagonists, who arrives at the Temple of Wisdom, which is flanked by the Temple of Reason and the Temple of Nature. And in response to his question, "Where am I now? What will happen to me? Is this the domain of the gods?" the chorus of priests exclaims, "Dark night retreats from the rays of the sun. Soon the noble youth will feel a new life. Soon he will be wholly dedicated to our order. His spirit is bold, his spirit is pure." Now note the setting. Taormino arrives at three temples: wisdom, nature, reason. Those that are the main principles of the Enlightenment, a cultural, political, and intellectual movement that will sweep across Europe from the late 17th century and throughout the 18th century. Now, note also the language of the chorus. An opposition is made between darkness and light, and a young man must show he has an enterprising mind. He is brave in seeking a new life. And those are the ways in which supporters and participants of the Enlightenment characterize their own devotion to this movement. And the opera indeed culminates with the defeat of the Queen of the Night. And then the Magic Flute, the Queen of the Night, represents a dangerous form of obscurantism, that is the desire to prevent knowledge from reaching all in order to maintain the status quo. For some, the Queen of the Night represented Roman Catholicism. For others, she represented the tyranny of absolutism. Her enemy in the opera is Sarastor, who symbolizes the enlightened sovereign who rules according to the principles of reason, wisdom, and nature, the very values that Taormino is called upon embracing. And the opera tells the story of the education of mankind and progress as the world moved from chaos and superstitions to enlightenment. And it is noteworthy that the opera itself contained many prominent Masonic elements, and that Mozart himself was a Freemason, something that is defined in your textbook. So on the one hand, we have an opera performed for a king that celebrates reason, nature, and progress. On the other hand, the opera stresses the courage to face one's enemies, the King of the Night, the forces of the night. So why would courage be required? Well, 30 years earlier, in 1760, a French scientist and philosopher, Jean d'Alembert, explained what he understood to be the purpose of an Enlightenment thinker and that of other Enlightenment philosophers. And he wrote, "While certain adversaries, either men of small attainments or of evil intent, openly made war on philosophy, the philosophic spirit took refuge in the writings of some great men. Without desiring to tear the blindfolds from the eyes of their contemporaries, they worked silently in the remote background to prepare the light of reason, which gradually and by imperceptible degrees was to illuminate the world. And indeed, the Enlightenment, which derives from the German word Aufklärung, characterized this 18th century. Now, how do we define the Enlightenment? According to your textbook, it was an intellectual and cultural movement. It was cosmopolitan, meaning that it was thought of as a republic of letters that transcended national boundaries. It valued reason, reform, and freedom, and its representatives were philosophers, or known as the philosophe, from the French word. So what was a philosophe? So people understood, at the time, understood a philosophe to mean an independent thinker who does not submit to prejudice or to passions of their age. Someone who exercises reason and produces knowledge through rigorous and unflinching self-examination. Someone who has a zeal for truth, a luminous and profound mind, as D'Alembert said of Francis Bacon. Someone who has a duty to the dissemination of these principles and therefore the courage to do so. And someone who seeks to embrace all knowledge and seeks to provide an explanation for all knowledge. As D'Alembert wrote, a mind that sees everything on a grand scale, and someone who is concerned about the happiness of mankind. So what does this mean in practice? Well, it means that most of these thinkers believed in the perfectibility of man and in progress, as opposed to divine fate and revelation. Some argued for equality, others argued for reform. And most of them were interested in metaphysics, in what was called then natural philosophy, that is, science. Now let's look at some of these philosophers that your textbook also introduces. First of all, Immanuel Kant. Now for Immanuel Kant, reason is important and what makes us human. And Kant explained in an essay that he wrote in 1784, what is enlightenment, what that meant exactly. And this was an essay written in response to a competition organized by Prussian ruler Frederick II, and that invited philosophers to reflect on what the Enlightenment was. Now, in this essay, Kant explains that everyone must have the courage to use reason. And what defines enlightenment is the freedom to make the public use of reason. That is, reason is not just a duty, but a right. Only with and through reason can the rules and duties governing human life be established. And what characterizes human beings for Kant was the following. He wrote, rational nature exists as an end in itself. Now, Voltaire was another of these Enlightenment philosophers. He was a French thinker and a very prolific writer who published over 2,000 books, often satirical. And he was especially critical of religion, faith, the Roman Catholic Church. Remember, France was a Roman Catholic country, and advocated freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the separation of church and state. And he also had to go into exile for his writings. So when thinkers said that it took courage to use reason, it took courage to spread the Enlightenment, this was not a baseless claim. Many could be imprisoned, censored, or have to go into exile for their ideas or writings. Now, another very important philosopher is the Swiss philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And he published a very famous text used to this day, The Social Contract, in 1762. So he began from a fundamental problem in order to articulate why we should embrace the social contract. He explained that man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. Now, why was that? Well, according to him, this was because of the rule of force. The world was uncertain, and in a state of nature, could be overturned by anyone who was stronger than the previous person. The rule of the strongest prevailed, and that was a problem because it meant social order was not possible. Instead, he argued that social order was a sacred right, and in order to guarantee social peace, prosperity, and progress, every individual must enter into a social contract, and it is a social contract that founds society. So what characterizes the social contract and what makes it desirable? Its clauses are everywhere the same. Everyone tacitly admits and recognizes these principles. And in fact, the fact that everyone gives up some rights allows for everyone to benefit from the same rights. The conditions are the same for all. And that meant this is how equality was made possible. And this was made possible in turn because individuals can will, consent, and judge. And he famously explained, each man in giving himself to all gives himself to nobody, and he gains the equivalent to whatever he loses. And for him, in exchange, the social contract provided some essential principles. It provided the possibility of justice. It provided the notion of public good belonging to all, so that public affairs do not encroach on the private minds of citizens. It generates a sense of duty. And in fact, the faculties of humans are so stimulated and developed, ideas so extended, feelings so ennobled, and whole soul be uplifted, that above all, man gains moral liberty. So this was the infamous pronouncement by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, which inspired many in the French Revolution afterwards. Now, all of these writers wrote in many different genres: essays, pamphlets, books, literature, and even pornography. But one of them, Denis Diderot, also invented the encyclopedia, which was compiled from 1781 to 1752. And this came from the belief that many had at the time that all knowledge could be catalogued, though because it was sometimes considered dangerous by the church, by a king, these men often had to be creative to escape censorship. And your textbook explains some of that. Now, I've referred to men in thinking about Enlightenment thinkers, and that is because most of them were. And because there was a way in which only men or most men were educated. Nonetheless, there were some exceptions, and some women famously wrote and contributed to the Enlightenment. One of them was Mary Astle. Mary Astle wrote Reflections on Marriage in 1700, and in it she famously wrote, "If all men are born free, how is it that all women are born slaves?" And she pointed out the inconsistencies of Enlightenment principles to argue for freedom to be available to women. And in fact, she showed how the private reflected upon the state. She explained, if absolute sovereignty is not necessary in a state, why is it in a family? And here I want to note that she makes an analogy between women and slavery, women as enslaved beings. One that is problematic, but also that speaks to some of the ideas people had at the time in relationship to the world in which they live. Nonetheless, Mary Astle, in fact, invokes the rule of fair and just law. Now, another famous woman is Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1797. And for her, reason was available to both men and women. She makes a similar argument to Astle, in fact, borrows from abolitionist claims to end slavery in order to argue for the end of women's subjections. She uses the notion of duty and good for society as a justification for the need to end the subjection of women. It is good for society for women to be free. And she argues that, in fact, what will make love and marriage true expressions as opposed to false is, in fact, the end of domination and subjections. Once women are active citizens and able to exercise freedom, marriage becomes a true expression of free will and love. So in conclusion, we can see that some of the overarching principles of the Enlightenment were the following. For many, man is free because he is determined by reason. Man is rational. Man is autonomous. Man is at the center of the world, not God. And in fact, man answers not to God, but to other men. And in fact, this points to the fact that many of them believed that rights were intrinsic to human beings and developed this category of the human, which is important because it poses the question of who is considered human and who is not. And these convictions led to a number of questions that animated many of these writings. How can men live together? How are they to best govern themselves? How can all enjoy happiness? Now, as I've pointed out, that doesn't mean that all believed in equality for all in everyone. And to better understand this, we need to understand that the Enlightenment took place and emerged in the context of the Atlantic world. My next lecture.